have Wolfie's mom here.
Hello.
So, yes, I do appreciate you when you get on stream and talk about some of the facts about Alzheimer's that affected your family and such. And, yeah, I mean, first thing, how did it affect the family life with your mother, Wolfie's grandmother?
Well, um, it it was a lot of work on everybody's part, the kids' part, my husband's part, and mine, to make it totally work out. Everybody had a pitch in. I had my dad along with my mom too, that has had his own sort of problems, and well, my mother's Alzheimer's was a little different than the usual. My mother had the reversed effect of Alzheimer's. So, what that means is her body started failing, but she still had her mind. And she was, when I got her, she was more at a point where um, we had to feed her. uh, she could still walk with a little guidance. She was able to do that, uh, and of course I had to dress her and do that sort of stuff. When what we decided to do was we made Grandma the queen, and I had two girls, and I have the only two girls on both sides of the family. So my son was in college his first year, and Abby was in middle school. She fifth grade. Well, that's considered middle school here in Ohio. And my daughter was sophomore in high school. So when my Amanda was when she was able to drive, that made life a lot easier, because if I was at a doctor's appointment or somewhere like that effect, she could always pick Abby up from school, which was the school was across the street from the high school. So that made life a little simpler. Uh, Abby got a phone early on in life, due to the fact that sometimes I had to tell her that you're getting on the bus. I'm not going to be picking you up. I'm stuck at a doctor's office, or we're getting a test done, something of that nature. And we made Grandma out to be the queen. So we took her to the movies. She liked the movies. We took her shopping every weekend, and she used to tug on items because she couldn't speak anymore. So she'd tug on things, and we'd all crowd in the dressing room, and the girls would go through like a fashion show for her. And she could still laugh, and she still thought, and she had opinions and things like that. Uh, the girls did her nails. What else did you do? Yeah. Here's my sister with my mom and myself.
Okay.
Okay. And that's my house. And uh the girls were the ones that would do mom's hair. They do her nails once a week. One of the other things was my mother is first generation here, because her parents are from Austria, and they spoke German. So my daughter was learning German in high school, and it was funny. They'd sit at the table at night, and then she'd laugh at her when she said words incorrectly. Then, with her speech was like very broken up, so she'd somehow try to get her point across to her. And it the downside was that for the kids, it took away sometimes things that sometimes they'd like to that they wanted to do. So Abby was less involved in school. I would say in sports, she was involved in mostly in choir and theater. Uh, so when I had to, I had to make sure somebody was always home, like my dad, uh, and somebody with my dad that we could watch. They could watch mom while I would leave to pick somebody up from school. My husband is an engineer, so he travels. I'd say about 50%. 50% of the time he's gone. Hmm? 50 40. Yeah, he's gone about that much of the year in work wise. uh, so that was a bit of a burden. I would be the one that stayed home when, let's say, Abby had her choirs, recitals, or they were in a play, or man was in speech and debate. I'd send everybody off on their way, and I was the one that stayed home. So I missed out things a little bit that the kids were doing. My husband was the one that went with him. Uh, the the upside was, out of the family, I am the one that always lived away. Everybody else still lived in New Jersey. So for the kids, it was an opportunity to really get to know um, their grandma and grandpa, which was really, I think, kind of cool for them. Uh, what else would you say? What for you? For me, yeah, with grandma. Yeah. It was fun to work outside and look up from the backyard, look out the window and watch her wave at us and give us a thumbs up as we were working. Did you hear Abby?
Barely, but yeah.
Oh, okay. So one of the things that made my mother very happy is that we have probably about close to 2 acres of land next to a farm field and a development. So she enjoyed sitting by the window, looking outside. She would wave to the kids. She liked the birds. We had a bird feeder outside. She watched the birds come. We also had deer coming across. She enjoyed that. She was a lot of work because I used to get up really early in the morning so I could shower, get myself ready. Then I'd get the kids ready to go to school. And then when I came back, then it was time to get mom up and get her ready. And my dad was a help because he was able to make his own breakfast and take his own pills. So he worried about himself. And then I worried about my mom, her medicine, and getting her dressed, what she needed to do. Uh, we had her on a schedule to go to the bathroom, so that worked. Uh, when we went grocery shopping, that was a whole day affair. Took up a lot of time, but I used to put my mom, because she's a tiny lady, in the kitty cart. So, where they have like the little animal section and all, and then the cart's attached. Well, dad took a cart to put things in, and I took a cart. And they had a restaurant at the grocery store. So we used to start by going to the restaurant, and eating for her was on the difficult side. She couldn't always chew food. So she used to love apple pie and cinnamon ice cream. A waitress was fabulous. They knew us once a week. So I'd feed her, my dad eat his meal, and then we'd grocery shop, and she just enjoyed herself going through the store in the kitty cart. Yes, she pointed to the items that she wanted. Those were the ones we put in the cart for her. Uh, you know, you just made things work, and we tried very hard as a family to make her feel comfortable and feel love. And we had a we had a crown for her. Oh my god! Yeah, it was made of wire and it had these metallic flakes. So uh, we took the crown and then we made streamers out of it. And she used to put it on her head, and she was so happy wearing it. Crown from St. Mary's for Mother's Day because we took her to the Mother's yes. Day time. Mm-hmm. We had the crown. Yeah. So she'd get to church every so often, maybe mostly on holidays. And then our church had this Mother's Day. Uh, it was like a brunch, and the daughters would come with their moms, and my mom came, and each of them would stand up and talk about their mom, and they talked about grandma, and that's where the crown came from. And she wore that sucker, I'll tell you, almost every day she put that crown on. That was so special to her. Um, I wish and I miss where my mom, when I said, I love you, mom, or you happy, mom, that I just had to look in her eyes and her smile and watch her shake her head. I was I was sorry and sad that I couldn't hear her anymore, but the effort we made to make her feel good and feel happy, I think gave her a really good life here. And that took a lot for the family to contribute. It took a lot for my kids to be patient and wait for what they needed so that mom could get hers first. But overall, I'd say everybody was happy. Everybody had a lot of patience. I don't know unless you have any if you have anything else you want to ask me or something I didn't cover.
Oh, well, you definitely covered a lot of how you handle the family life of it, but I'm sure there were difficult days. That was very.
Yeah, there were. Yeah, I'm not going to say there wasn't. I had both parents in the hospital at one time for the same week. I had my dad that needed surgery on his defibrillator. So I left here at 4 o'clock in the morning to get all the way to another hospital with the two of them. I had to get mom in a wheelchair. And then and everybody was always really nice to me. I mean, they came in and they would help me with her. My dad would like shuffle and tag along. So we had him, and then they decided to keep him for a few days overnight. They were worried about infection and a recovery period. So then I took mom back, and then mom in her frustration would have some hissy fits. So I would have to drive her then the next day and pack a lunch so we could go see dad. But then after about 3 days, she got sick with pneumonia. So I had to take her to the local hospital. And what I wound up doing was going to see my dad in the morning, come back, Amanda had to take care of Abby, or Abby had to take the bus to come home. And then I'd go up at night to the other hospital to see my dad, and my husband was out of town. So I spent the night sometimes in the hospital with my mom. So look, what I would do is she didn't want to be left alone. She really couldn't communicate. So I we get her to sleep, and then I'd scoot out about 1 o'clock in the morning, come back home, get a little sleep and all, shower, get up like about for 5 o'clock. So when she woke up, she would see me, and then I'd tell her I was going to leave to get the kids to school, go visit dad, and then I'd come back again. But then that left my daughter Amanda having to take care of Abby, which both of them had to give up some of their activities and come home until I got home and make dinner and do some of that stuff. And then they both got out on the same day. My husband came home. It was the weekend. So my husband went to go get my dad. I went to go get my mom. You know, so yeah, there were some moments that were not the greatest. But again, everybody sacrificed and worked it out. And and the way this had happened was that prior to living here, when I lived in Pennsylvania, my husband's dad lived with us. So he had Parkinson's. Um, he passed, and then in October, and we moved here in April. We got bought the house in April, so the kids finished school, and my husband was already in this house. My sister probably had my mom for maybe about 2 years. And then my sister asked me to take my mom, and I said, wait a minute. And then when everybody was home, I said, well, my sister really is, is mom's too much for her already, and it's really not working out. So they'd like to come here. And amazingly, everybody said, when are we going to move them in? And I called my brothers and I said, pack a truck. And that's how it went. And I think they were happy to see my kids on a daily basis because they had to count on us traveling 10 hours to get to them, to stay at the house to see them when they still had the house. So I think they enjoyed watching the kids grow up and all go to their graduations, things like that.
Of course, definitely some tough times. Definitely with that kind of Alzheimer's. If anyone in chat would like to ask a question or something, I'm definitely going to open it up for people to ask questions at this time. As I can understand how some of this definitely affected and all that for y'all, and I bet the communication was definitely a situation starting out with her. If, as you said, it was she, with her having to point stuff out and such. Weren't I could imagine there were some days that she had a problem getting her point across.
Oh yeah, yes. And she'd have little hissy fits, like she'd stamp her feet up and down in the chair, or she'd take her fist and bang her hand on the table. And it was like, okay, grandma speaking, what is it? And then it would be, we'd start with one thing, and it's kind of like charades. All right, is it this? No, no. Is it this? And then she's starting to say, yes, is it this? No, okay. And that's how we all figured it out.
If she got mad at you, she yanked your hand.
When she got, yeah, when she wanted my attention, she'd pull your hair. Like, like pull it. And then be like, okay, what you want? Yeah, there were things like that she did. In a way, it's a ugly disease. Um, but the reverse of this Alzheimer is when the mind fails first and then the body. So the blessing was she knew who we all were. She never lost track of that or anything. So I didn't have the part of the Alzheimer's where somebody could go wander out. Somebody 1 minute would talk to you and know who you are, and the next minute they didn't. It was it it was different.
Okay. I do have a question from Cinnabon Nubis. Did she know or was she aware at any time of what was happening? Or did she deny anything was wrong at all?
The majority of the time, she denied that there was something wrong with her. I'd say majority. Uh, Only a few times when she become very frustrated, she'd have a little tear in her eye and look at me like, sad, and I'd be like, okay, let's just move on and make the best of it. And then she'd pick herself back up.
Okay. Um, yeah, I can. I mean, some people just don't want to admit when they can't do something. Let's put it this way: some of us are.
Some people are in denial, yes. Um, the way my mom started out was little things started, like difficulty writing. Um, she still had her speech, she still knew who we all were. Um, li- uh, then maybe like she'd forget some things that would, yep, there's her crown. Abby got it. We saved it. I got grandma's crown on. Um, she would forget some things, but then her started breaking down, like a difficult time speaking. Um, Use of her hands, like in picking things up, making an X instead of signing her name. And what they originally thought she had was mini strokes happening. That's and they did several scans on her, and they thought it was strokes, and she didn't have any high blood pressure of anything of that nature, but that's what they were surmising it to be. When I moved her here, we're fortunate that we have the Cleveland Clinic here, which is a very large, major hospital here. And the doctor said, we're going to get her to a neurologist here. And what he did was he did a scan on her, and he had the scans from New Jersey. And he didn't ask me any questions. He didn't want to know anything. And when I sat down with him, it was amazing to me because he talked to me as if he was living with my mom and taking care of her, and exactly how she deteriorated. And he said he could see when she was in New Jersey why they thought it was stroke she was having, and now where parts of her brain has changed, and it's definitely Alzheimer's. It's just that she's the reverse of it.
Mm.
So, and he said, and to tell you the truth, she didn't need any medicine. She didn't have high blood pressure. She didn't have high cholesterol. She had nothing. Nothing. She was healthy, and he was right. He told me that you just got to take nature's course, and what's going to happen is that parts of her body, something major is going to start to fail, and that will be her demise. And it really was. She wound up with pneumonia like 6 times, and at at that point, she didn't want to go to the hospital anymore. It was really getting difficult uh, to put her to go to the hospital and feed her. She's becoming more demanding. She wasn't trustworthy of the people in the hospital. She was scared. So I made the decision to do hospice and had them come in and talk with us. And, they said, it doesn't mean you're going to die tomorrow. And people can live for a very long time on hospice. But I was glad I did it because, she's starting to have nightmares at night. My dad was waking me up. So then my sleep started to suffer. So they were able to give her like a concoction that my dad could make up and give her a droplet. And we had them in the same room. And they brought in a hospital bed, which made it easier for me to manage my mom. And we rolled it right next to the side of the bed where dad slept on, and they were together. And when she'd have her nightmares, he'd make up the concoction and he'd give it to her and allowed me to get uh, back to back to sleep. And they brought in this fabulous chair. This chair, you can manipulate it like 100 ways. And I could just slide her from her bed onto the chair, and then we could roll her out to her favorite spot in the living room. Sometimes I had her out on the deck, and my dad could sit with her out on the deck, and she just was happy to be with nature, and she was a very content woman, um, which I think at that point, even though she knew who we were and all, I think the denial the the denial of being sick or being unaware of being sick had left her. So she wasn't, she just knew where she was and who we were, and knew we were taking care of her. And I don't think anything else at that point really mattered to her.
Okay. I do have a couple of other questions here from Chad. This is from Bcon37. How much was it a pain when nursing homes, hospitals, and such for you and for your mom? Because,
Well, okay.
because for Beacon, he is also living in central southern Ohio, and they had a horrible time for his grandmother. He just wonders how it was for you.
Okay. So we made the decision early on and a promise that they would not be in a nursing home, that we would keep them in the house. And that was very relaxing to them. The problem was when she had to go into the hospital, the nurses really, like, mom couldn't talk or speak. And what I would do is I would try to make my times coming in like different during the day. And they would say, well, she didn't want to eat. And it's like, well, she can't eat. You have to feed her. And I had a few nurses a couple of times, like, well, she's used to you, so you go and do it. Like, they they just didn't care or want to take the time to care.
Mm.
Um, like she went when she went for her scan. We that was the first time she was in the hospital with pneumonia, and she went for her scan. And I had known from before with my sister that she had to be heavily sedated because there was no way she could lay and go through that tunnel and all. And the nurses didn't give her the scan. And when I walked in to see her, the she was like all bent out of shape and all. And when I went to the nursing station, I said, "Why is she so upset?" Excuse me. And they said, "Oh, we forgot to medicate her." And then one little slimy nurse said to me, "Well, she didn't know the difference." And I said, "I hope someday you lay on a table and you say you don't know the difference." But I made it clear to the doctor, I made it clear to the neurologist, and then I had a supervisor that was bent out of shape because she had to come down and had to be reported to the state because I complained. But that, I think, was a god awful thing to do and not take ownership for it with an apology or something of that nature.
Mm. I see. And I got some questions from Shauna17. Were were there things that you now think of that you should have done differently, and things you wish you could have done with her, but in the end couldn't?
There's nothing that I would have done differently. It was totally a family effort, and that was the only way that we could make things work. Um, what I what I wish was maybe I could have had more time with her earlier on before the disease really took its effect on her. Uh, to hear her voice or to go and do things with her that she enjoyed instead of instead of doing it when it made her happy, but that's all you could see that it did. She couldn't talk about it. She couldn't do anything like that. That's my regret. But we just lived too far away, and I had another parent living with us and she couldn't travel anymore, and there was nothing I could do.
Mm. Okay. Yeah, I just had a comment from Sin of Anubis, as it's just more or less coming on their question. The sad fact is because CNAs and nurses rarely get the full diagnosis and symptoms associated with each patient, and the fact that Alzheimer's affects people differently in different stages, they simply overgeneralize and stereotype and put every Alzheimer's patient into the same treatment plan. I don't know if that's always the case. I feel like they do get it. It's just they don't want to read the reports. But
I I I think a little bit is some of them some of them care and some of them just don't. It's they got a lot of patients to take care of, and they're just going to go from room to room, and that's what they're going to do. Maybe I should have hired a private nurse. That would have cost a ton of money though. and my parents on Social Security and paying for their insurance. And thank God they had good insurance because there wasn't any cost to them. The insurance covered everything. But, um, you know, they need more one-on-one care on there. And I did nursing homes with my father-in-law, and I was the one that said, I'm done. You could forget it. We're not going to go through that ever again. I pulled him out in the recovery, uh, because the care was so damn awful that they put him in, like nursing homes are strange. If you go to a private section where you can afford to pay for it, the care is totally different if you get moved to a Medicare section. And he was in a nursing home for recovery, physical therapy, basically get back on his feet and all. And it was it was the most amazing thing that I saw walking in there, and how unclean it was. And you would go to the desk and I complain, well, we only have two people today. It was just excuse after excuse, and I just pulled them out, and I did physical therapy with him because I just couldn't sleep at night knowing that was the way he's being treated in a home.
Mm, okay. Well, I don't have any other questions coming up in chat right now, and
Okay.
I think right now, what is one thing you would say to people that's never had to deal with this, and what to look for in their own parents or grandparents on this, or anyone that they love on this?
You mean that have this illness
Well, don't have it per se,
that
but
don't have? I would say enjoy enjoy every moment that you can with them, because you don't know how sick they're going to get and how long they're going to be sick. And you know and you watch them sometimes suffer. That enjoy your time, and even if you live away, you know you now have Skype, you now have cell phones. At that time, we had the flip phones when we had them, and we didn't have Skype. The internet was just starting. It was just becoming something popular. I'd say use all this electronics that you got available to you to keep in touch with them. Write them letters. Just let them know you love them.
all right. Well, I think that's a good positive note to leave off on this testimony. I do appreciate you coming on the stream and talking about this. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we will get started with the D&D here in a few minutes. I'm going to put the Be Right Back screen up, everyone, and we'll get everyone together for that. I do appreciate the questions that came out. Again, tomorrow night, nearing shots fired. A lot of the medical side of this will be talked about with Sin of Anubis and Mama Wolf, as everyone's calling you right now. So,
Okay.
we'll.
Mama Whoop signing off. How's that?
So, with that, we'll be back here in a few minutes, everyone, and we'll get into Kaataria After Dark.
All right.